Are you concerned about all this corruption being misgendered as conspiracies? Well, don't you worry. Sit back, relax, and join in the conversation as we talk with today's guest. Welcome to another LSB Film Productions podcast with your host, Chris Brooks.
Hello and welcome to the channel. It's me, Chris Brooks, for another LSB Film podcast. Today I've got Paul Dobidoo back on the show, and last time he had some really insightful knowledge as to what's going on with the world, and it's not necessarily the things which a lot of people agree with, but to me it resonated, and so that's why I wanted to have him on, and that's why I wanted him back on. In the meantime of speaking to Paul, I have just watched his video that he's completed and put up on YouTube. So it's going to be quite different, this podcast, because we're actually going to watch the whole thing in full and then we're going to talk about it. So let's have a watch of the film and you can tell me what you think in the comment section. But first of all, before I do that, welcome to the show.
Hello.
How's it going?
Howdy. Whatever.
Yeah.
It's okay. Here in Poland, yeah.
No, it looks nice.
Dzień dobry.
And the weather looks nice as well.
It's hot. It's really hot. It's boiling.
Yeah, nice. Don't rub it in. It's about 21 here.
Sorry.
And rain's on its way. But right, okay. So before we crack on with the film, what's the film called, and just give a brief overview.
Right. I mean, when I put it on there, I just put Cataclysm on. It's basically about cyclic cataclysms, but I'm kind of covering a present situation and an outlook of possibly could be lying ahead in terms of cataclysmic cycles, which are quite, it's quite tight. Also covers altering the timeline. It's up to other people. I've summarized a lot down there, so it's up to people to decide.
A lot of that was broken up with bad signal, but so we're just going to get straight. Yeah, don't worry. We'll just get straight into it, and we'll chat about it afterwards.
A great reset is taking place. Those in power seeking to establish a new world order of control. Whilst this is happening, this simplistic interpretation is wrong. In fact, it makes almost no sense. For if those in power already secretly control everything, and have for a very long time, why now make this so visible? The popular explanation is that the cabal have been forced to act heavy-handed because so many people were now waking up to the deception. This is to grossly overestimate the threat that those awake pose to those in power. A self-appointed elite that can manipulate all governments, control media, rewrite history, science, launch wars, destroy currencies, and have the entire backing of the world's military forces is not threatened by a few unarmed dissenters it labels as conspiracy theorists. Rather, the dismantling of civilization is not the means to an end, but the end in itself. Agenda 21, The Great Reset, are cover stories to explain everything that follows. It is the destruction of our current way of life, but to understand why, we need to understand where we live. Earth is a planet with ruins, lots of ruins. Civilizations come into being and then simply stop. The mainstream explanation is of gradual collapse. However, there is another explanation, one that has been deliberately hidden from us. An answer so terrifying, were we aware of it, it would change the structure of society and how we view ourselves. It appears Earth is subject to cataclysm. minor cataclysm, such as mud flood, and more major cataclysm that erases entire civilizations and reshapes the surface of the planet. All these cycles are much more frequent than we have been led to believe. It is claimed ripples in the galactic current sheet mark boundaries in field reversal. When the Earth passes through a boundary, the environment of the solar system changes. For the Earth, this represents an electromagnetic field reversal. Pole reversal involves the collapse of the electromagnetic field and transition through a zero point. This has a catastrophic effect on climate and the surface of the planet. Mainstream science portrays pole reversal of the Sun as every 11 years and indicated by solar minimum. Venus is described as not having an electromagnetic field of its own, only an induced field. However, this narrative is a deception. Likely all bodies within the solar system experience pole reversal simultaneously. Otherwise, how could Venus possibly maintain its thick atmosphere if the Sun reversed its polarity every 11 years? Moreover, the variation of output from the Sun is only 1/1000th between solar minimum and solar maximum. Solar minimum and maximum is merely related to the number of sunspots and too negligible to have any effect on Earth's climate. De facto, the solar minimum and maximum cycle is inconsistent with pole reversal of the Sun and the havoc we would expect to see were it taking place. This lie has been put in place to hide the catastrophic changes that do take place to the Sun and to pretend that field reversal is of no consequence. This is not true. In fact, the accumulation of a dust shell around the Sun and subsequent solar reignition might be described as a micronova. For Earth, pole reversal and the accompanying micronova of the Sun will involve crustal displacement. The crust will electrostatically detach from the mantle, allowing the heavier ice caps to move under centrifugal force to the equator. New ice caps will form at what are the new poles. This unusual displacement of continental landmass through 90 degrees has been deliberately misinterpreted through geology in the story of ice ages. Rather, ice ages are completely fictitious. That Antarctica shows evidence of tropical rainforests between so-called ice ages is confirmation that it is the crust itself that moves. Evidence of Antarctica's settlement prior to the last displacement event is the entire explanation as to why visits to Antarctica are prohibited. Flash freeze is not an indication of ice ages, but rather evidence of local flash freezing resulting from impacting supercooled plasma or atmospheric depressurization. Continental drift, the gradualist cover story overlaid to conceal more dramatic crustal displacement. Earthquake and global tsunami are perhaps the most serious threats during the sudden rotation of Earth's crust from its present axis. The solar system entered its transition to magnetic reversal some years ago, as evidenced by the movement of our poles. This is an accelerating process and not gradual. The culminating micronova of the Sun has happened many times before. Horrific as it is, micronova, pole reversal, is survivable, but this is dependent on many factors and most importantly, location. Man-made climate change is a cover story to conceal real changes taking place to the planet as cataclysm nears. As the Earth's pole shifts and weakens, so does Earth's electromagnetic shield that protects the planet from harmful radiation. High-energy solar particles are able to damage the upper atmosphere, and the ozone layer is gradually diminished. This appears to account for the increased brightness of the Sun, Moon, and stars. Aurora have become more frequent, appearing pink and at low latitudes. To combat such dramatic changes to the sky, atmospheric hazing and a variety of geoengineering programs have been employed. Particles introduced into the atmosphere are a physical barrier to radiation, be it visible light or infrared, thus reducing surface temperatures. Firestorms have been deliberately engineered to foster a sub-narrative that climate change is being done deliberately for nefarious purposes. Whilst installations manipulate cloud, talk of atmospheric heaters is misdirection. Such arrays cannot heat the atmosphere because scatter would cause insoluble heating problems at the array itself. Similarly, ozone is not being deliberately destroyed to support the climate change narrative. These concepts have been introduced to misdirect from the collapse of the electromagnetic field, which can be directly observed. When Earth's electromagnetic shield weakens further, nuclear war will be used to explain increased surface radiation. Blackout caused by electromagnetic damage of infrastructure will be attributed to cyber attacks. These narratives have already been prepared. The collapse of agriculture due to solar radiation has also been covered by an alternative story of the deliberate dismantling of food production. The destruction of the traditional way of life, economically and structurally, and steps to introduce autocratic one-world government will be used to hide genuine collapse and impose control over population. When the climate deteriorates further, it will be declared that due to the failure to curb human activities, the climate has passed a tipping point. This will be used as a pretext for further clampdown on basic rights and freedoms. All the strategies of the cabal can be explained through this simple understanding that the world faces global catastrophe. The approach taken of concealment rather than disclosure reveals the cabal's priorities. The cabal seeks to maintain control. To do this, it is essential that the numbers of those who survive the cataclysm are relatively few, so that the event can be erased from memory and a new history inserted in its place. This is about power and control. Those who consider themselves awake correctly identified man-made climate change as a hoax. However, they wrongly argue that no climate change is taking place. This is a huge mistake. As micronova nears, the climate will deteriorate to extremes that will become impossible to deny. Man-made climate change will be blamed, leading many otherwise skeptical to reluctantly accept this explanation. However, the man-made climate change narrative is completely impossible. It can be debunked simply by looking at the fractional nature of the gases and calculating the ratio of energy capture required to produce any warming effect. For example, carbon dioxide at 0.04% is a 2,500th of the atmosphere. That means to warm the atmosphere by just 1 degree centigrade, carbon dioxide molecules must capture 2,500 degrees centigrade of radiant heat energy from the Earth's surface. That is impossible, as clearly there is not 2,500 degrees centigrade of heat available. It also breaks all the laws of thermodynamics. Methane at 0.00017% is a 600,000th of the atmosphere, so it's even more impossible. To cause just 1 degree centigrade of heating, methane must capture 600,000 degrees centigrade of radiant heat energy from the Earth's surface. Problematic, as this is over 100 times hotter than the surface of the Sun. Methane rapidly breaks down in sunlight, so is used as a standard marker for life on other planets. Nitrogen, with levels of 334 parts per billion, is almost a 3 millionth part of the atmosphere. To warm the atmosphere by just 1 degree centigrade, nitrogen must capture 3 million degrees centigrade of radiant heat energy from the Earth's surface. In order to get round these contradictions, violations of basic physics, those advocates of man-made climate change incite accumulated heat. Enter magical thinking. NASA and even Nobel Prize-winning physicists have expounded accumulated heat as the explanation how CO2 is able to warm the atmosphere. They claim that over hundreds of years, CO2 has captured heat energy, and this heat has accumulated to produce a serious warming effect. Accumulated heat, while sounding a reasonable explanation of how heat can build up, is nothing more than gobbledygook. In fact, it shows that those using such arguments do not even understand what heat is, or rather, are deliberately misleading. When we measure temperature, we are measuring the heat energy a thing is losing. In short, heat is a measurement of flow, the transfer of heat energy, and this will always be in the direction of the colder. For this reason, a thing can never accumulate heat in the way described. The temperature of a body is the measure of heat output. It can never be greater than the measure of heat input. The ratio of dioxide is as a 2,500th part of the atmosphere. Therefore, the ratio of energy capture to produce a heating effect must be the same. Moreover, the rate of energy capture by CO2 must be maintained, otherwise the atmosphere will cool. Heat must flow. To get around the problem of thermodynamics, it is simply ignored. A deluge of erroneous detail is used to give the impression of authority and discourage basic common sense questions. Opaque terms such as solar forcing used to create muddle and fog thinking. The public is told man-made climate change is a fact not to be questioned. When this fails, the butterfly effect is introduced in an attempt to overcome obstacles of scale and proportion. The butterfly effect uses anecdote to circumvent the absence of a functioning warming mechanism. Yet, the flap of a butterfly wing in Brazil cannot produce a tornado in Texas, just as the stamping of a foot will not cause the moon to crash into the earth. It is childish to think otherwise. Magical thinking.
In determining when micronova will take place, it is first necessary to identify existing deceptions to the chronology. Carbon dating is grossly inaccurate, and similarly dendrochronology is so subjective as to be almost worthless. There are no good dating techniques, and our understanding of the archaeological timeline is based entirely on the work of Scaliger. As an example of how history has been jumbled, the destruction of Pompeii in AD 79 and rediscovery of the ruins in 1748 appears to be a fabrication. Surprisingly, Pompeii existed on maps long before its discovery. This makes no sense if it was lost to history. According to records and analysis of ash deposits, Vesuvius actually erupted in 1631. The 1631 destruction of Pompeii is even recorded on an inscription on a plaque on the side of a villa on the road to Naples. This is important because Pompeii is used as a prime marker to determine radiometric decay rates of carbon-14. The deliberate misdating of Pompeii skews the already unreliable carbon dating results by almost 500%. But it gets worse. Russian mathematician Anatoly Fomenko identified that historical astronomical observations do not align with the calendar but are some 1,000 years out. Incredibly, it appears that 1,000 years were added to the date with the adoption of the Gregorian calendar in 1582. Actually, year 582. This alteration carried out against pagan beliefs to consolidate the church and distance the freedom fighter Jesus from the increasingly difficult to control Christian populations. The change is confirmed when looking at the dates. The simple changing of an I or J to a number 1. Here J stands for Jesus, or I for Isis. Hail Zeus. The substitution added 1,000 years to history. Year 582 became 1582. It means that year 2024 is really year 1024. The Dark Ages preceded the birth of Christ. The Roman invasion of Britain by Julius Caesar in 55 BC is the Norman invasion of 1066. The same event told twice. The Bayeux tapestry is a Victorian fake with industrial dyes and materials. Many were aware of the change to the date. Isaac Newton was aware 1,000 years had been added to the calendar and expressed anger that his formula describing eclipse was made to appear inaccurate because early observational records had been shifted. Newton even became a member of Parliament in an unsuccessful attempt to correct the calendar. The change to the date is important because once we understand the correct year we are living in, we see that we have already been given the date of Cataclysm. The Bible was written by the Cabal. Whilst the teachings of Christ are all about natural law, this has been embellished with symbolic imagery referring to micronova. Son of God means exactly that, and the resurrection relates to the resurrection of the Son during micronova. The 3 days Jesus spent in the tomb relate to the 3 days of darkness that will precede solar reignition, when the dust shell will darken the sun to a dim red disk. We are told in Revelations that the interval between Cataclysm will be exactly 1,000 years. 1,000 years from Christ's resurrection, age 33, gives us a date of April 8, 1033, what we understand as 2033. So, accordingly, the date of micronova is April the 8th, 2033.
The controlling entity, be it alien or fallen angel, seeks to ridicule. Not only history fabricated, science too must be misdirected. The insertion of entirely wrong fundamental theories. Lifetime actors have been promoted to ensure the misdirection became mainstream consensus, not to be questioned. Space-time replaced the ether, impossible physics that had to be supported by ever-complex equations. Truth is power. It is kept hidden.
Transhumanism, AI, nanorobotics, DNA manipulation suggests technology far more advanced than publicly acknowledged. The people are given the crumbs for control. Mandela effects equate to experiments in altering the timeline. Faster than light transmissions sent back in time, instructions to effect minor changes. That we're aware of these changes, evidence that consciousness is entirely separate from the physical timeline. Proof of soul. Send technology back, and this is a technological accelerator, concertinaing up development time. Thus, the power of Luciferianism is that it is based on real things. The Cabal are rulers with almost perfect knowledge of the future, able to change past events, might indeed consider themselves godlike.
Venus conjunctions occur every 8 years. When plotted in order, they form the satanic pentagram. The planetary orbit produces the outer circle. This is also the origin of the lotus flower symbol of rebirth. Prior to the last micronova, Venus, then showing a dusty ring, was known as the planet Saturn, giving rise to Saturnalia. It is Venus that Luciferians venerate. Venus is the origin of the fabled dragon and the Eye of Ra.
So why Venus? Revelations tells us. In Revelations, planets are described as candlesticks. The story of the two witnesses refers to the inner planets Mercury and Venus. Accordingly, we are told for 3.5 years they will produce spiral tails prior to micronova. These spirals are described as the golden oil of palm trees. There is more. The story of the resurrection is the story of micronova. The Son of God is quite literally the Son of God. The 3 days Jesus spent in the tomb parallel the 3 days of darkness that will precede micronova. Cataclysm will mean a new earth, whilst crustal displacement will change the position of constellations, a new heaven. Revelations was written by the Cabal. It is not intended to be decoded. Rather, it is written in the style of predictive programming. Whereas in the Gospels, metaphor is used for clarity, in Revelations it is used to hide the truth beneath riddles. In Revelations, Just as in predictive programming, the same events are told and repeated from different perspectives. Hence there are so many false starts and false ends. Its tone is of ridicule to God, to mankind. With that in mind, the falling star of Wormwood refers to nuclear disasters, Chernobyl, Fukushima, the death of the Pacific. The sea refers to the sea of politics, legalese, maritime law. The sand of the sea is the people that sit below that sea. The first beast of Revelations is the existing financial system as characterized by New York, which we might regard as the whore of Babylon. The second beast is the new financial system that will emerge following collapse of the old, the new world order of the mark. The mortal wound that does not kill the first beast, be that a psyop event on New York itself, the crash of stock markets, the wonder of this event that the bankers will continue even after the financial collapse. 666 refers to three-strand DNA and the spirals of the inner planets Mercury, Venus, and Earth. The white horse refers to the bright sun presently observed as ozone thins. The pale horse is the sun as it begins to dim. The red horse, the sun with its accumulated dust shell. The black horse, the sun prior to micronova. The raising of the dead refers to material drawn up into the atmosphere during micronova. And the wolf will lay down with the lamb refers to how the cabal will endeavor to re-establish human civilization post-cataclysm. Using the foundation of Rome and the Eye of Ra as both early events referencing micronova, we can establish the interval between micronova as between 2600 to 2800 years. The absence of well-preserved structures older than this also supports this timeline for cataclysm. Micronova are extremely frequent events. This appears the fifth micronova event since the controlling entity first installed itself, that also following a micronova event. So this may be written as the fifth or sixth such event, depending on starting point. All this information and much more is available in Evidence of Madness by Doobidoo, available on Amazon.
Right, so what did you think of that then, everyone? I thought that was quite a well put together small documentary, really. So congratulations on the film. I hope it does well. I know you had to reduce it down thanks to the YouTube censorship. So leaving the censored stuff out of it, what made you want to do this film?
It's the only reason this that I mean, some of that information is already out there, but I've basically concertinaed a lot of information together, and quite a fair bit of it will be new information. Certainly when I'm talking about the stuff to do with Venus, that's new information that I don't think, I'm not across anyone that's familiar with that. And putting the whole lot together, no one's really done that either. When you actually sort of see the timeline with Revelations, how that kind of, I haven't invented that. That's using what's already been put out there.
Mm-hmm.
And I've just looked at that in Revelations and like, oh, look, this gives you a date when this could, this cataclysmic event, if people, take that in and think that's a distinct possibility, that gives you a timeline for that. Other things are, the fact that the pole is shifting is that is observable. That's taking place. One of the things that no one has noticed, which I think is kind of, to me, it's one of the biggest secrets that's out there, but it just seems so nothingy. Mm-hmm. Is the fact that they're telling us that the sun has an 11-year cycle where it's a reversal.
Sorry,
and that
what was that last
seem,
bit? The sun has an 11-year cycle.
It does a polar reversal.
Polar reversal.
Magnetic poles flip of the sun every 11 years. That's what the mainstream will tell you. When I thought about that, it seemed so incredibly unlikely. In fact, it's observably the poles do not flip on the sun. So then you have to ask yourself, why would they lie about that? I mean, I just don't.
Could this be why Thetford, where I live, we've actually, and I'll put some photos up on here for the audience to see, but we've actually been seeing the Northern Lights, or supposedly Northern Lights.
Pink.
Pink, blue.
Well, no, the Northern Lights should be green usually. What you're seeing now is pink Northern Lights, and you're seeing them not really in the north. You're seeing them quite low latitudes. Okay, so you're seeing them in. Usually, you'd see them in the, up round the Arctic Circle, but now you're seeing them, in England. We've had them here in Poland. They've had them all over America, and all the way to really quite low latitudes. That's because the Earth's electromagnetic fields have reduced down. So you've got these high energy particles from the sun, but usually they're taken in towards the pole, and now they're coming in. They're able to get in at different latitudes, at lower latitudes, and because you're getting different energies coming through, which are I couldn't even tell you, but it's giving you these. It's changed the aurora, so now you're getting a pink aurora instead of the normal green aurora. So that's a very obvious way you can say, oh, well, the magnetic fields of the Earth are changing. What I was just talking about prior to that is about the sun. I don't think it's credible to believe that the sun reverses its polarity every 11 years. What I think is they've had to lie about that, because if they tell you that the sun has it's a much longer cycle for the pole reversal, and then people suddenly notice changes that are taking place to the sun and to the other planets, and they're taking place to the Earth, and they're all undergoing magnetic pole shift. It's like, hang on, everything's undergoing magnetic pole shift. Oh my God, this is serious, and it's like the whole cataclysm becomes obvious. So how they've said, oh, it flips every 11 years. And instead of describing the sun's magnetic field as it would be, which is like, imagine like an apple core, that kind of shape around the sun. It's like the same as the Earth's magnetic field. They always show these kind of chaotic images of the surface of the sun. It just looks like chaos and all that. And you assume, because you've got all these little loops coming out of it, that's the magnetic field. It isn't. That's the surface, just the surface plasma and that stuff tearing off. So that's quite it doesn't seem like it's a big lie. It's a huge lie. I mean, it's about the biggest lie you could possibly have, because by doing that lie, everything else is hidden, because you assume, oh, well, a pole reversal of the sun, that's nothing. It takes place every 11 years. What I'm saying is, no, it doesn't. I think that's an absolute just made up. It's just not true. The pole reversal is everything in the solar system is going to have a pole reversal simultaneously. It seems very technical, but that's what I think is taking place. As the just trying to find something round that I can illustrate. Hold on a sec. Okay. Imagine that's your sun. Okay. Now, as we get to further on, the poles are going to move from the ends here, and they're going to move around towards points on the center. In fact, lots of poles will appear.
You're going to have to bring the ball into the shot, mate.
Sorry. Lots of poles will appear. Okay. And at that point, you've got Venus out here, somewhere over there, and the same thing's happening there. And Venus will be losing its electromagnetic field as well. And what you're going to end up with is a big vapor trail of atmosphere coming off Venus, and it's going to trail off, and it starts to get pulled in towards the sun. And then around the sun, that will start to form a kind of cloud, which is called the dust shell.
So not too dissimilar to what the planes are mimicking at the moment.
Well, you can think of it in that way. That'll get hot from the sun. But then eventually, when you have it will reach a certain point where the poles have moved over, and then suddenly you'll have the actual flip through the reversal, and that shell that's come around the sun will blast off, and that will be your micronova. But no one has, I don't think anyone, I've not seen anyone else spot this thing connection with Venus. And as I say in the video, if people do the research, it seems that Venus has got a lot of significance and importance. And that's what I'm saying. I think that's how that's come about, is because of this these spirals that are this spiral that will form around Venus. You get something off Mercury as well. If you think about it, the symbol of Venus from the symbols is the scorpion, which is a spiral shape on the tail. And of course, the end of IPEC Goat 2, on the final scene, you've got a scorpion shape in the clouds on that last scene. You've got a sun that's got circles coming out from it, radiating out. And then over the other side, you've got like a bird, eagle or
Phoenix?
Owl or no, I don't think it's Phoenix. It's some sort of kind of owl-like figure in the clouds. Well, that would be Mercury is the winged messenger. So that's a symbol of Mercury over the other side that they've got. So you've got, even in that last shot in the IPEC Gate 2, you've got they're making a reference to those planets, and then you've also got the sun with the cycles coming off. I'm just trying to give you things that people can go and look at and check and think, oh, that kind of is in there,
Pre-programming is best.
Well, it looks like predictive programming. And there's a lot of it in films as well that will tie in with this. I don't want to scare people to think, oh my God, there can be a micronova, and get all terrified, because it's an unquantifiable event. So at one level, it could be almost nothing. And at another level, it could wipe out everything on Earth. I think it will. We probably will have some sort of major cataclysm in there. But the extent to which that's, how alarmed people need to be, that's something they need to assess themselves. I mean, certainly in the predictive programming as well, it seems that there's going to be floods, flash freeze in places, but you've also got the danger of the flash from the actual micronova itself, and
which I assume would let out loads of radiation.
It would. There'll be a lot of radiation anyway coming through, because we won't have the electromagnetic field shield at that point. Okay. But you've got to also remember, most animals are going to survive this, and you've got quite small numbers of some species, yet most of them are going to survive this. So the micronova itself is going to be survivable, but maybe you need to think like an animal were, and think, well, what's the best way of protecting yourself? So obviously, if you've got radiation, you need something that's underground, just
Like a
foot
bunker.
or yeah, but not. You don't want to go deep underground because we're going to have probably have earthquakes as well with that. So you don't want to be buried alive.
Or
So you
flooded
just
out.
want to, yeah, you just. I mean, also with the um, information I've put out is, God, my brain's going blank again. Uh, you're going to have a big warning with this. I mean, if everything I'm saying is complete nonsense, then you're not going to see a Venus spiral and stuff, which I showed in the video. I've showed more or less what you kind of need to look out for. If you do see that spiral, then you need to think, okay, there's things I need to do. If that's if you might decide, wow, let it happen.
Would that spiral be visible with the naked eye, or would you need to
Yeah, well,
use?
you go if they allow you to see it. The only thing is they might cloud out the skies. They probably quite likely they will try and do that, but there's going to be occasions when you're going to see it. Okay, uh, so it's almost impossible to hide completely, and even when you get in towards that the micronova itself, I think just the effect on the output of the sun, you'll know that something's up, but it will be people at that stage. People will be hysterical and panicking. And I mean, part of what I'm saying, it's a reassurance. It's like, yeah, look, relax. Everything's going to be really great after this has happened. It'll be fantastic. But there's this kind of cataclysm coming up. Got to get the other side of it. Yes, it's going to be very tough during that cataclysm and afterwards. But then it's like, it's going to be really, really fantastic. Great.
It's like
But
a reset, a planet reset.
it's a physical reshape of the planet itself. It's just it's like the death of the planet that's gone before, and it's literally like a new Earth. Some of the amount of seawater that we could have coming over the land would be potentially, it could be a huge volume of water coming over the land. So whether that hits at speed or it's kind of just a gradual tide coming up, then it's what you can do to help yourself through that situation. I mean, if somewhere like the UK, probably you need to be thinking about having some kind of flotation device or something, just making something basic. But you're going to have 3 years from when the spiral appears to come up with some ideas. But I think if the cataclysm is going to happen, the cataclysm isn't going to be something you're going to be worried about as such, because the breakdown and everything else will be so extreme that you'll be looking for anything that's going to end the situation with the how the cabal have taken over, and the micronova event will be it, and it will cut it dead, and after that it's gone, and everything will be kind of building up from that event. So in a way, the micronova itself is actually something very positive. It's not something to be terrified of, or let it play on your mind and get upset about it, or anything else. It's just like it's a thing that's going to happen, and there are things you can do that are going to save your life if you decide I want to do those things.
So it's going to be a
Does
little
that
bit
make
like
sense?
So it's going to be a little bit like
Uh,
Noah's Ark
yeah.
Part
Well,
Two.
I mean, you've got. I mean, a lot of films have. They've included this in the
Water world.
predictive programming that's there. But it's, I mean, the thing is, because I've said about this Venus spiral, if there's no spiral, I don't think it's going to happen. If you don't, if these changes don't take place, like the reddening of the sun, which will be towards the very end, the spiral, even when you get close to the micronova, you're going to have 3 days of darkness. So for those 3 days, I mean, you'll probably already be sheltering from the radiation. But for those 3 days, you know, okay, I've got to get out all the provisions together. Let's get in the little bunker and stuff. We know there's going to be this impact that's going to happen. Probably have earthquakes. We're going to have this probably a lot of wind coming over, and then probably this deluge that's going to come across. So we need these certain things to get through it. A rubber raft isn't going to do it, I'm afraid, because there'll be so much debris that'll come in this.
It'll be like the tsunami of.
Yeah, it's like you've got to have
2012.
something. Yeah, more. That's quite a good way of looking at it. So basically, just being able to. I'll let this thing pass. Just being able to ride out that the deluge of water in something that's I mean, if it was me and I was trying to, where I am, we're not going to be making I'm in southern Poland at the moment. We're not going to be making a flotation device or anything like that. We've got loads of animals and they take priority. So my priority will be looking after the animals. God, if I have to take them into a shelter and stuff and have them in there, that's what we'll be doing, all that. And we're quite a long way from the coast here. We will take our chances as it is. And, because I can't get all the animals, I can't build an ark here for them all.
Start calling you
it's
Noah.
possible. Yeah, well, but that's what we're going to do here. If I was in the UK, probably I would be looking at making some sort of, I'll have ideas for some kind of flotation device. It wouldn't have to be very much. It could be a barrel. If it was for a number of people, I'd have a barrel for someone to sit in. And I'd get a couple of other barrels around the side to give it buoyancy. And then I'd just put maybe a fiberglass it all together into a big pod or something and sit it in my yard. And it's like, okay, if anything happens, we're going in that. And it sounds barking mad, but if you're seeing this thing in the sky, there's no way I should be able to predict something like that. So if that happens, the sun will micronova. It's pretty well guaranteed it's going to happen.
Do you think this is why they're banging on about the climate change? Because they're trying to make something, well, they're trying to make this situation look like something else.
Yeah, of course they are. That's what you would do, isn't it? If you've got something that's everything is they've put all these sub narratives in place. So to an extent, the World Economic Forum is a sub narrative. Yeah. But also they're basically, you're dealing with they're kind of opportunists. So there's almost nothing you can do on a big scale. As soon as it becomes something that's got a momentum in a direction, they'll latch onto it and take advantage of it. They'll make it work for them. So it's like people are thinking like, oh, it's great, the bring down the banking system and everything. And it's like, yeah, they all deserve to, the whole system deserves to go down. But look at China when the communists came in. You had a engineered famine there, so I understand, that helped to bring in the Chinese system you've got now. Same in with the Russia, and you could look at Germany before the Second World War. You engineer a crisis so that
Problem
you can
reaction
then,
solution.
yeah, you get, because then you've got public support. All the public, they're going to bring about the change you want, regardless. So, as much as people are saying like, oh, we can get rid of the government and all this kind of thing, and bring in a new government. Yes, you can do all that, but the government that you're going to be cheering in, the chances are they'll get in there first. They're already ahead of you. They've already thought all that through. They'll have the people there ready to bring in. So there's no, you need to think of yourself in terms of what how you're positioning yourself and the sort of precautions that are taking place. I mean, the good thing about all this is that just being aware of it makes your chances of survival are vastly, thousands and thousands of times greater than the general the average person who they're never going to be able to get their heads around this. So already you're in a tiny minority. It's like, okay, I know it's going to happen. I'm not going to panic. I know there's certain things I need to do. So you can get yourself prepared for this. And also, the main thing is being psychologically prepared, because people will go insane. They will go mad, because it will seem in those last months towards Micronova, it will seem like it's hell on earth. It's going to be hot, probably no water, people being burnt, skin being burnt. There's going to be all the things the cabal are going to be doing, with famine and everything else, probably.
I was going to say,
So
what happens if you're, say, like you say, like UK, for
I could
example,
be wrong.
if you're on a boat and there's loads of water about, how are people going to eat?
Well, I mean, also the thing to be aware of is this is a supernatural process. I mean, the general hordes of people, your public, they're going to be vaccinated up to the eyebrows. They're going to have taken in so much crap, they're probably going to be physically falling apart anyway. Their morality will go to zero. I mean, the government has made jokes about cannibalism, all these kind of cannibalistic references. So there's a cannibalistic reference in was it The Road film? Got all these zombie films out as well. So that's all, to me, it looks like it's references to a collapse that's been engineered, where people are reduced to an animalistic state. Yeah. So just as I say, just being aware of that, and as I say, this is a big spiritual component to this. I mean, this is very flattering for the people that are aware of what's going on and that have woken up to it. But they need to be aware. In biblical terms, they are the elect, because they're the ones that have been. You've been shown what, or made aware that the world isn't what you thought it was. I mean, we went on for hundreds of years, and you've never had a situation where so many people have been aware that they've been lied to this extent. So there's obviously something odd going on, that people are waking up to it. I mean, the way I woke up was very peculiar. I mean, basically, I was kind of, I wrote a book which called The World Destroyed, which is about 2015 or something. And it was all about, basically everything that's currently taking place was in that book. But I was completely unaware of any conspiracies and stuff. I thought I was writing fiction. When I finished that book, I still wasn't awake. And it wasn't for, about a year or so after that I actually woke up under different circumstances. And it's only latterly that I've realized, oh, bloody hell, everything was actually in that book. So how do I write something that covers everything else if I wasn't
aware of it.
conscious of it? Yeah, so it's kind of a weird situation. So people are being woken up, kind of it's the kind of higher self kind of thing. So it's there is this big spiritual component to it. So don't worry about not having food or what am I going to do and stuff, because actually you're going to kind of have help towards that sort of situation. It's not going to be a horrendous kind of
Armageddon
impossible situation. Even if there's no food, you'll be okay. You'll somehow you will get through it and it'll be fine.
And what's the timeline on this?
The deadline that I think that the micronova is going to be 2033, and I kind of explained it in the film. Everything I'm saying I can be completely wrong on. It can be absolute nonsense. I mean, I know in that I've made statements about the Bible, and that's going to annoy people, and people are going to get like all outraged and stuff like this. But I'm not.
I
I'm
would
not
say a
saying
lot of the Bible is written by the Cabal anyway, especially the
well, that's what I would say.
Yeah, end of world stuff.
It's been kind of blatantly written by them.
Yeah,
yeah.
Definitely. That's my view.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, but I know people will get, a lot of people are like, oh, it's the word of God. It's, it's like, well, God wouldn't allow a different version of anything to be changed in the Bible. It's like, well, okay, how come there's, hundreds of different versions of the Bible? It does, that statement doesn't make any sense. But it doesn't mean to say that Jesus didn't exist or that the Gospels aren't based on something or a person. But as I say, what the Cabal will do, or the entity, whatever you want to call it, is it will co-opt everything and use it to their own advantage. So it's like, oh yeah, we're going to keep the Bible and everything, but we'll just tweak it slightly so it's going to work for us. And I think that's why they've put in these references to the micronova in there. And also it's about them taking they absolutely despise us, totally despise us.
The useless eaters.
And yeah, but it's not even really about wanting to destroy us. It's about wanting to take us down to the lowest possible state that we can be. It's a kind of war of revenge. I mean, it does sound like the very much the heaven and hell kind of, the fall of Satan kind of thing. I kind of think it is that, but with it might be slightly more nuanced than that kind of thing. Yeah. Okay.
Well, interesting times ahead is all I can say then.
Yeah, I don't want to. Yeah, it did seem kind of.
I mean, can you remember when people went absolutely batshit crazy when they broadcast War of the Worlds on the radio, and people thought that was a real thing?
I wasn't alive back then.
But people selling their houses, and so I can imagine this would also create a similar kind of scare.
Yeah, but I mean, at the end of the day, it's not being afraid of what's coming up, because, as I say, it is I've had so many kind of weird experiences that there's definitely kind of like a God entity and all this kind of thing. So I used to be total atheist kind of thing, but so many weird things have happened that it's like I have absolutely no doubt there's a kind of God entity, and that people, if you're in a way, it's up to you. Do you want to survive this? What do you want to do? It's almost like you kind of do have the choice, but kind of have to want to. Do you want to get to this state, the other side of whatever's going to happen, or not? I mean, that would be the first question. Because a
Well,
lot
I
of
would
people would
say
say,
yes. I would say yes if
yeah,
it wiped out all the evil cabal.
well, it will. It will wipe them out, but that doesn't mean to say they won't come back at some point.
Mm.
If that's kind of it's because we can't get rid of them. They will always be there. But it's kind of like they operate by a kind of Luciferian contract. I mean, one of the things I also came across when I was kind of thinking about this, and because I've had a lot of kind of interference from probably just because I'm putting out, I will kind of like make comments of put out material on just comments on YouTube, but they're maybe a bit on the bit
Risque.
bit risque. I've had a lot of interaction with what I think are the security agencies, and it occurred to me that they're actually operating by under Luciferian contract. That means they're actually all this satanic stuff. I mean, it sounds mad, but
Well,
I
not
actually
really.
think,
Not when you look into the Masons and
yeah,
who they actually worship. Once you get into the
I actually
33rd.
think one of the things I think they tried to do, they did this weird blackmail thing where they tried to get me to go into it just, I mean, the fact that they do it shows that they're doing it loads, because I didn't have anything really. They basically misinterpreted something and assumed that they could blackmail me. So they sent these images to my phone, and it was like, you can't, this 5 o'clock at night, why are you sending it? It's like, how is this possible? And it was trying to get me to go into a contract. I only realized this a year so later. But I think that's how they're operating. They're trying to get if you accept a contract with them, basically it means then, okay, well, now if we want, we can kill you or do anything. I mean, it's almost like the license to kill kind of thing.
Mm.
And you don't think of that. I mean, it's a very kind of odd statement, but it's also like, I think that's how they're operating. They're operating under kind of this Luciferian
Cultist.
contract. Yeah, very kind of, but they actually kind of believe this kind of, and it is based on something. And one of the other things that this is literally just looking at something and kind of thinking it through. But you've heard of number stations?
Number stations. I've
Yeah.
heard of, but I couldn't tell you much about it.
Basically, I think they're on shortwave, and they're these government facilities all over the world. Lots of countries have got these. Well, all countries have got these, and they put out these coded list of numbers. I think it's in set of 4. Is it 4 or 5 numbers just being read out? Okay, and this basically they're doing this continually. Okay, but sometimes they use like a little child's voice or odd voices. They'll use different voices to this, and it's just being read out over and over again, repeated. And the popular explanation, mainstream explanation, this is a form of messaging for spies. Well, if you think about that for just a few minutes, it's like that's not going to work. It's just stupid. because apart from the fact you're broadcasting it so everyone can hear it. But also it's like, well, the spy would have to listen to all this instruction for hours and hours. It's like how much time would they spend trying to get these numbers and then trying to turn them into something that made sense? It's just so wildly impractical. And then why would you do that when there would be other ways of doing this that would work? I mean, the encrypted codes and stuff. Why would you possibly do that?
What about is it dementia? Is that, I could probably mispronounced that.
Well, what I think they're doing is, I think they have these numbers that are being read out. It's not to any specific spy or anything like this. I think what these are is they're basically, it's a ritual. So each of those numbers, they will say, has a meaning. So it's like, it might be sleep. These numbers together mean sleep, or listen, do what you're told, or be afraid, or take the vaccine, obey. Very much like They Live.
Mm-hmm. John Carpenter.
And it's a great. He's done some great films. And that's being broadcast all over the world, and they've been doing that for, I think, since First World War. They're doing it's almost since they've been radio. And I think, to me, it looks like that's what that is, and it sounds crazy. So you've almost got well, it's not. You have got the film They Live is actually telling you about what number stations are doing. They're trying to put into effect an intention by broadcasting it, and it's there for everyone to hear. It's reaching everyone, whether they're conscious of it or not. The fact they know the meaning of it, and it's done in plain view, because you could pick it up on a radio, means that they're putting their will out, an instruction out, and no one's objecting to it, no one's picking up on it. So that's how it's being carried forward. So that would be an example of how this kind of the kind of satanic kind of magic kind of thing is actually operating within the security networks themselves. So it's like our government and governments. It's there within everything, the way they operate. They are actually kind of satanic kind of entities that are kind of dominating us.
That's it, and they have to tell you.
It doesn't mean to.
That's their karma thing.
Yeah, I mean that was the only. I mean, maybe someone's got a better idea what they are, but I just thought that was something interesting to have a look at, and that was my interpretation of when I looked at some of this stuff. But the changes that I to the timeline that I went through in the video as well, this 1,000 years being added. I mean, I quite a lot of people are aware of that. That's not a secret.
That's not deemed as a kooky conspiracy as such, is it? It's more of a plausible theory.
Yeah, but I think when I was looking at that, I mean, this isn't included in video out there at the moment, but I have written about this. I also think it might partially explain what the mud flood was. We've had a minor cataclysm. 200 years ago, or maybe a bit earlier, and they've incorporated that the changes to the timeline. They've incorporated and solidified those at that point of that cataclysm. Um, it, when I looked at the, because I know you've done stuff on Tartaria.
Mm-hmm.
When I looked at the Chicago Fair, World's Fair, if you remember?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. There, I'm just looking at some of the architecture on it, and we've got this big, massive statue, gold statue in the Chicago Fair. And I was looking at this spear that they've got on the photographs and trying to work out what the hell was on the top of this spear. And it was a Thracian helmet. I've eventually kind of identified this thing. Okay, it's a Thracian helmet. Well, Thracia, that's Greek. Well, it's that area. It was the Spartans. I think that's one of the helmets they kind of had. Then all the boats that are they've got as part of that display as well are also come from the Greeks, and the architecture is kind of Greek Roman. So that's kind of suggesting that what we would take as a Tartarian Empire is this classical Roman Greek Empire. You have the mud flood, which looks like it's kind of possibly involved some kind of again some kind of flooding from the sea, and they've brought that system to over to an end. So if there was this global civilization, which was, we call it Tartaria now, what I'm thinking is maybe that was the Roman Greek civilization, which just existed more or less, or that was the kind of culture that existed over the earth and had basically more or less it kind of been there since the last cataclysm. It started getting root then, gradually developed various little splinter parts of this kind of global classical civilization. Then you have this mud flood event, and then what they've done is they've taken some buildings and they've said that was from ancient Rome. Then they've taken the newer buildings that they couldn't pass off as ancient. They've said, oh, well, that's a neoclassical building that's been done in the 20th century or something. And then other buildings they've put back and said, like, oh, well, that's from the Renaissance period. And by doing this, you've
created a timeline.
You've created a timeline where you say the Roman civilization ended, a few hundred years after, was it 600 BC or something? And and then you insert your extra 1,000 years, and then you can say, oh, well, and then you have the Renaissance in the 1600s. And then the whole thing is kind of like chopped out by the mud flood, lets you fog over the whole thing. But that kind of seems a more plausible explanation, because if you think about it, you've got Athens and Rome, where you've got the Colosseum surviving, for God's sake. You've got the Parthenon surviving. How did these sites survive if they're meant to be from buildings that have been standing derelict for 1,000 years? It's like, people don't work like that. If those buildings were still around, it means that they were being used. No one's, people are greedy, and if they see a pile of stone that they can use, especially if it's got lots of nice carvings on it, they will have that. They'll like, right, I'm going to have that. I'm going to do something with it. they'll turn it into something else. They'll build over it. They'll take the foundations out or something,
Just
use a
recycle it.
stone for something else. It will just be ripped apart very quickly. It's not going to stand for thousands of years at all. I mean, it's where we are. There's buildings around here that have they were from the 1970s, and they're just because they've not been no one living in them, and the roofs have gone. They just very quickly, once water gets in, a building will very quickly deteriorate into just a pile of rubble.
That's it. I
It's
mean,
not
you've only got to
gonna.
look at these cleverly made time-lapsed things where you've got old buildings and you've got trees and they start growing in them and they start to crumble and
Yeah,
nature soon takes over.
yeah. So as I say, with it's just linking in with that timeline. There was a really interesting documentary by, was it Paul Cook, I think his name is. I find his stuff really difficult to watch because he's like me. He just like waffles too much. And but what he was pointing out is that he found these kind of, and I've seen this as well. You've got these slithers of like iron in rock formations by the sea.
Hmm.
So you've got like a pile of rocks, and then you've got a very straight line of iron. And looking at these things, he eventually worked out what they've done here is that they've built little steel boxes, and they filled them with basically cement, geostone, I suppose you'd call it. And the iron cladding boxes that you've used to make these is still in place. They couldn't get the iron out, so that's what has left this trace. What I'm thinking is, well, for that iron to survive, that's probably going to be for quite a recent period. So if they were building all these boxes of basically stone masses around the coast, they would basically, it was sea defenses. So that means that they were aware there was going to be some kind of flooding event, and they left all the iron there. So that means that they were working in a rush. They didn't have time to take the iron out. They were just charging on with it, and it was no expense spared to actually do this. So that looks like an indication of something from the mud flood, where you can actually say, okay, we can say that it's some kind of sea inundation that's taken place. I kind of found it interesting because it does tie in with that the mud flood kind of idea, and it's starting to get an idea of what it could be.
No, that's interesting. You said you wrote a book. Is that book for sale? Can people get that book anywhere?
That's on the same website as the Evidence of Madness thing that I did. Yeah.
Okay.
Could
you resend me that
lovely,
link,
that is.
and then I will put that in the video
Yeah. It's I mean, it's written in a female voice, but it's fully illustrated throughout, and that's really lovely, really nice. I mean, there's a lot of swearing in it.
We like swearing,
but I don't swear at all. So it's weird writing it that way, but it's very, very nice, because it's like it's kind of like this immoral character, and think like, oh, they're horrible, they're awful. But by the end of it, you think like, oh my God, they're like really, they're like so nice, So it's like that kind of sort of shift.
you
that
form
someone on the
a
outside,
relationship with the characters.
yeah. You think like, oh, this is a terrible person, but then by the end of it, you think, oh my God, they're great.
No,
Yeah.
that's great. Well, listen, I've loved talking with you. I'd say
Yeah.
probably about an hour and a half now. Thank you very much for your time. I really appreciate it. And yeah, if you can send me, sorry.
Yeah. Sorry, I gotta say thank you for having me on again. I know I'm not a great speaker on this stuff, because I waffle into detail that people probably don't want to hear because it just seems like I'm going off on a tangent. But I'm trying to give information that will be useful for people, that they can go and check something and go and look at something. That's the reason I'm. But thank you very much for the opportunity to talk on this. I'm going to put this the Evidence of Madness PDF will be on Amazon. The other book will be on Amazon as well. The World Destroyed is one. The other one is Evidence of Madness, which is all about the micronova and the other bits and pieces. If people want to have a look at them, I think I mean that's more or less it. But don't be people shouldn't worry too much about this, because if things do go the way they could potentially, it's really saying to people that there's a positive end. It's not going to be hopeless or anything. In fact, the world that will come out of any kind of cataclysm will be great. And I may sort of say, oh well, I think it could be this, and it sounds horrific, but also nothing is fixed. It doesn't mean to say all this stuff is going to happen. It potentially could happen. There's things that indicate to me that it could happen. And if people want to survive, get through the thing, they probably there are things that they can do which will help them to do it. But let's see what happens when we get closer to these events anyway, and see if it's looking like that.
Watch this space.
Would that be something that you would it be something that you would feel that you could that you would be trying to deal with yourself?
I would like to think, if the time come, that I would try my best to see it through and protect the family.
Yeah. Do you sorry, it's a kind of personal questions here, but it's kind of interesting, I guess. Are you
I believe in
doing
God.
anything yourself?
Oh, right, okay.
You do?
Yeah.
That's definite. I can be very, very definite on that for sure. Absolutely.
I don't necessarily like using the term God because of all the connotations that come with it now, but I do believe in a higher consciousness.
It's all. I mean, the church that I've seen, from what's going on here, is so corrupt, and really, I mean, people that involved in it. But I mean, I can only say what I've seen, and they're probably great people in it. But the people that I've seen involved in it, if I told you the story behind it, you would think these are the people that should not, the last people that you would ever think would be in something.
Most churches are corrupt. I mean, when you think about it, really, churches were probably like the first kind of councils that existed. They were the authority, weren't they?
Yeah, I mean, again, it's been co-opted and taken over as a control system. I mean, they'll use anything they can.
Absolutely.
And I mean, that's the other thing. I mean, after this thing happens, if it happens, the cabal will be looking to reestablish themselves, and they won't be able to if people are aware of what's happened, and that's going to have to be a priority for the people that get through that. If anyone listens, the people who listen to this, the ones that make it through this, that should be a priority after the event, is actually keeping a record and saying, okay, this is what happened. This is what happened to me. This is what I believe happened, so that it can't happen again.
No,
Does that make sense?
100%. Yeah, it does make sense.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Right. Well, thank you very much. I've
Okay.
really enjoyed the chat. I hope everyone watching this has enjoyed it, and maybe have you on again at a later date to see
Well,
as the predictions become a little bit nearer to the time. But for now, everyone, look
well, it's
after
going to be
yourselves.
ages.
Yeah. Look after
Okay.
yourself. Take
Ta-da.
care. Bye.
Ta-da. Bye. Bye-bye.